This is actually the place of the Black Door Sacred Artifacts Containment, named Toxic Thrift Store. Here you can take on commission tasks, receive rewards, and also exchange for sacred artifacts. I heard movement outside the door. Janice, the clerk at the antique shop, walked out. After handing over the swaddling cloth containing the demon's remains, Janice settled the bill for the two of them quickly. After saving it on the computer, she handed over the reward for this task and a voucher for sacred artifacts to Hans. Demons feed on humans. They will devour anyone who sees them. But if it is possible to convert demons, to eliminate their obsession, they will leave behind relics. These so-called sacred artifacts can bestow special abilities upon their owners. And the inconspicuous little shop in front of us. Surprisingly, it is the place where Black Door collects rewards and exchanges for sacred artifacts. Using Miss Mary, Samuel and Hans successfully resolved the telephone booth demon incident. After the task was delivered, they received their reward in cash and a lightless layer voucher. Looking at the voucher in his hand, Samuel curiously asked, "What is this for?" The voucher is used to redeem sacred artifacts. The lightless layer on the voucher indicates the level of sacred artifacts you can redeem. This level corresponds to the depth of the deep sea, Hans explained to Samuel. Within the Mystic faction, Black Door specializes in containing sacred artifacts, mastering systemic knowledge of mysteries, acquiring sacred artifacts, and having channels for selling esoteric arts. Auctioning sacred artifacts is one of Black Door's sales channels. Additionally, this is all exchangeable in LY City. The list of sacred artifacts in lightless layer. Hans finished speaking and handed the list to Samuel. Samuel was stunned when he saw it. He didn't expect there to be so many. Seeing that Samuel was a bit lost on where to start, Hans reminded him again. 100 low-level certificates can be exchanged for one higher-level certificate. Additionally, having too many sacred artifacts can easily lead to losing control. The difficulty of obtaining anchoring will also increase. Therefore, one must consider carefully. Sacred artifacts are just a means to an end. The ultimate goal is still the anchoring line. Correct. After listening to Hans, Samuel became more certain of his direction. He wants to establish his identity as the deity of Luadu to construct his unique anchoring system. So Samuel pointed to one of the sacred artifacts on the list and said to Hans, "I want this one." Hans was stunned by Samuel's decision. He asked back, "Are you sure?" "I'm sure it's this one." Samuel pointed at the sacred artifact flame kindling on the list. Its ability is, "The fire of the Fire King, the embers are eternal." Samuel, who returned home, carefully flipped through the mystery to gain knowledge. For him, as a newcomer who has just started, it's really hard to understand without someone explaining it. So he simply gave up temporarily, picked up a pen, ready to experiment with the abilities of the new sacred artifacts. However, he didn't expect that in the moment he used the sacred artifacts, his body heated up as if it was on fire. His partial memories were also transferred into the pen. The corresponding cost is that some of Samuel's own blood is directly burned. To test whether flame kindling has been successful, Samuel touches the pen again. Suddenly, his previous experiences played out in his mind like a movie. The function of this sacred artifact is equivalent to a recording device. It can transform the experiences of the observer into images and store them in a medium. Anyone can view the information through the medium. However, Samuel's current physical condition is too weak. He cannot withstand burning too much blood to leave behind complex information. Finally managed to get through it. Samuel quickly eats some chocolate to replenish your energy. It looks like we need to experiment a few more times. Your own body will suffer. Early the next morning, Samuel arrived at the big tree where the shrine was placed. Here a group of small animals were already waiting early. They would also bring some strange and rare items as offerings to the shrine. Samuel fully showcased his genius-like painting talent by creating a very simple array diagram. He hoped that these small animals could understand it and conduct the ceremony. The blessing of the chaos. The release of the old crisis. The highest god of 99 and 81. The great presence sinking in the deep sea. In order to thoroughly establish the identity of the deity of Luodu, Samuel burned his own blood and utilized the sacred artifact flame kindling to brand it in the shrine, an image of a mysterious and indescribable god. At the same time, this ritual must be set up so that only those below the layer of weak light can see it. Only those who set up the formation and conduct the ritual can obtain the information. This will provide Samuel with an anchor for his faith. However, for him, using flame kindling 3 times in a row is still too much of a strain. To be able to create his own god, he needs to add more anchor lines. Later, he also needs to arrange the rest of the shrines. Perhaps there will be no immediate effect in the short term. But when the shrines are spread all over Ly City, there will always be a reward. One day passes quickly. In the blink of an eye, it's time to get off school. Originally, Samuel was planning to act with his classmates. But unfortunately, the shrine had a reaction, coincidentally. For Samuel now, there is nothing more important than the shrine. He immediately bid farewell to his 2 companions. Arriving under the big tree where the shrine was set up, the scene before Samuel shocked him. This old mouse actually understands formations. Could it possess human-like thinking? It placed dried leaves on the positions of plants and trees. It placed pull tabs on the positions of metals. Even the positions of corpses were correctly placed with an insect body. Where did this little white mouse come from? To achieve all this not only requires wisdom, but also a certain knowledge of mystery studies. After the formation is complete, the image left by Samuel will be projected in front of the white mouse, like a movie. And through the shrine and ritual formation, Samuel also understood the message that the white mouse was seeking. Its mind was filled with cheese and food. But if you think about it, it's true. After all, it's just a small animal. Its desire for these things is completely normal. The white mouse devoutly worships the shrine with spirituality. A piece of cheese fell from the sky and landed in front of it. Samuel naturally reached out. The little mouse got the piece of cheese. Presumably, it also became a follower of Samuel. Species are indeed fascinating. A little mouse understood Samuel's arrangement, while a cat was at a loss and confused. It was also quite startled by the arrangement around the shrine. Just as Samuel was sighing about the cat being exhausted, a clear clicking sound came. Someone took a picture of Samuel. Samuel looked up. It was the person who photographed the shrine that Samuel had set up. He was Kenneth, a member of the photography department. However, in Samuel's eyes, he appeared startlingly like a demon. Faced with such a terrifying classmate, Samuel showed no sign of any difference. Instead, he asked Kenneth if he wanted to hold the cat. This frightened the somewhat psychic little cat. Kenneth did not respond. Instead, he moved closer to Samuel. His face was almost touching Samuel's face. Fortunately, the head of the photography club arrived just in time. He interrupted his offensive behavior. Kenneth turned back and smiled. "Oh, sorry, it feels like a very good composition. I couldn't help but take a picture." The minister also very thoughtfully apologized to Samuel on behalf of Kenneth. He then turned and left with Kenneth. Samuel watched as Kenneth walked away in the distance. He faintly felt that something seemed off about him. In response to Samuel's speculation, Kenneth in the distance turned around and glanced at Samuel. His eyes were shining with a faint green light, and a meaningful smile hung on his lips. Just then, Han sent a message, asking Samuel to go to the abandoned textile factory at night. Samuel arrived at the abandoned textile factory, as agreed, and found that it was already surrounded by police cars. Many SWAT team members have already started to take action. It seems like they are about to launch an attack on the textile factory. Samuel, not far away, looks a little curious. What's going on here exactly? Hans explained. This is a cult group that lures and kidnaps children. The police have decided to bust their hideout. Samuel saw it at a glance. This is not a real situation. Because of his extraordinary intuition, he saw a horrifying scene. Above the textile factory stood an extremely terrifying demon, named Ubium. Its figure was towering and obscured the sky and earth, with several heads looking in all directions. Hans also spoke out the information he had obtained. There were people in the textile factory holding a dark ritual, summoning an ancient evil god from the deep sea. The occultist has no problem dealing with those cultists. The key is that they are too cautious, afraid of provoking this ancient evil god. Help pull it from the deep sea floor to the shallows. It's the anchoring lines provided by the cultists of the evil god. If left unchecked, it will eventually surface. It will become a nightmare for the human world. As he spoke, Hans took out the handbag he had deliberately brought. He took out a sniper rifle loaded with the Philosopher's Stone from it. In fact, as long as the police rescue the abducted child and successfully capture the criminals, people's panic will be relieved. If the anchoring lines of Ubium are destroyed, it will sink into the deep sea. However, Black Door still arrived at the scene just in case. Looking at this terrifying demon in front of him, Samuel asked himself what he could do. Without even looking back, Hans told him the answer: improvise. Upon hearing the radio say, "Action starts," Samuel was more nervous than anyone else because he was the most dangerous person on the scene. His intuition was just too strong, the one most likely to trigger the demon's feeding logic. As the explosion sounded, it heralded the beginning of the operation. The Ubium cult inside the textile factory locks kidnapped children in cages. They draw a formation centered around the cages in preparation for sacrificing to the evil god. The leader of the Ubium cult is currently brainwashing other followers. With a sudden explosion, the shockwave spread out, affecting several followers at the entrance. But the members of the Ubium cult remained completely calm, because they firmly believed that Ubium, the mother goddess, was their only hope. As long as they are devout enough, Ubium will grant them the ability to conceive, allowing them to have their own children. Under the incitement of the leader of the Ubium cult, these followers have become frenzied, wielding weapons to prevent the children brought for abduction from being rescued. Their devout faith, under the influence of the formation, indeed elicited a response from Ubium. One by one, they obtained extraordinary powers, even beginning to grow wings. At this moment, within the abandoned textile factory shrouded in smoke and dust, pairs of crimson pupils flickered among them, becoming particularly conspicuous. Even the special police officers felt nervous in the dense fog. Like the last time when it was such thick fog, the special police officers could hardly see. Those cult lunatics, however, were not affected. But this time, the situation is different. Harold led Sharon to walk out first. They began to bend their bows and set up arrows inside the textile factory. The arrowheads contain spiritual power that originates from demons. An arrow shot out, piercing through more than half of the textile factory and embedding itself into a cement pillar. Its extraordinary power is evident. The thick fog in the textile factory also began to dissipate. The terrifying scene in the field emerged before everyone's eyes. Disciples who are half human and half demon, one by one. Eyes sparkling with red light. Even the knowledgeable Sharon and her father were stunned. These are a group of monsters. Hans in the distance looked through the scope of his sniper rifle. He also saw the situation in the field clearly. He couldn't help but exclaim in his heart, "These are truly a group of lunatics." Just at this moment, the source of this disaster, Demon Ubium, underwent a transformation. Harold's intuition was really strong and had already been noticed by Ubium. It directly launched an attack on Harold. Harold muttered to himself that this was not good. The most worrying thing had happened. Faced with such a demon, even he was powerless. The abbot of YJ Temple also looked on in shock at the scene. If something happened to Harold, he would probably not be able to escape either, as he watched the gaping maw of Ubum. It was only a few meters away from Harold. A gunshot rang out, echoing throughout the entire textile factory. Ubum, just inches away from Harold, had her head blown open by a sniper rifle. The one who shot was Hans from a distance. This timely shot saved Harold's life successfully. However, this was not enough. Harold was momentarily unresponsive, clearly quite shaken. He also marveled at the fact that even the Black Door's mystery had a way to deal with this kind of demon. But the situation is not over yet. Hans pulled the bolt back again. Another 2 bullets. Ubum was hit again. These 3 shots did not cause substantial damage to it, but they disrupted its anchoring line, causing it to sink deeper into the ocean, beyond the depths visible to ordinary humans. The special police officers never saw Ubum from beginning to end. Seeing the opportunity ripe, they prepared to charge in. And in the eyes of these occultists, the once fear-inducing Ubum has now also disappeared without a trace. The abbot of YJ Temple looked in Hans's direction. This time, it's really thanks to them. Otherwise, his own life would be unpredictable. But the subsequent developments still exceeded Hans's expectations. The originally quiet Ubum suddenly erupted. Hans and Samuel were deeply shaken. Ubum has indeed sunk to a depth beyond the reach of the occultist. But Samuel and Hans have stronger inspiration. They can still see it. Ubum has found them. For a moment, Samuel and Hans were stunned. Ubum has already rushed over. The fear it brings has made Samuel's hands and feet numb. He can't make any response at all. Luckily, Hans has experienced big scenes before. He yelled at the stunned Samuel. "Stop staring! Get your sacred artifacts ready!" Hans hadn't finished speaking when he was interrupted by Samuel. "Sir, look! It's missing another head!" Samuel said. Hans also felt that something was not right as soon as he heard it. He knew he had only hit one of its heads. The 2 of them looked at Ubum together. The location where the disappeared head was. A vortex appeared there. The next moment, Hans seemed to realize something. He shouted at Samuel, "No, it didn't lose its head!" Samuel quickly hid. After saying that, Hans started to run for his life. Samuel hesitated for a moment. He had taken out the holy sword of physics and placed it aside earlier, but he hadn't brought it along yet. But it was precisely during that little bit of time he took to grab the holy sword of physics. The demon's murmur had already reached his ears. "Can you see that I'm about to eat you?" Samuel looked up in horror. The head of Ubum, which had disappeared without him noticing, had appeared in front of him. Its enormous mouth was capable of swallowing Samuel whole in one gulp. In this situation, Samuel didn't have time to think. He reflexively swung the holy sword of physics and struck Ubum. The harder he swung, the longer the effect lasted. The larger the opponent's size, the more pronounced the effect. From the hollow pupils of Ubum, one could also see its confusion, not understanding why its own body couldn't move. Samuel didn't even look back, fleeing like the wind. Hans took this opportunity to shoot Ubum in the head. This shot directly pierced its head, winning the 2 a precious chance to escape. After the gunshot, Hans anxiously inquired, "Samuel, are you okay?" Samuel said he is fine, because he reacted quickly. Currently, there is no problem. He used the mirror technique while escaping. Hopefully, it will have some effect. Although the 2 managed to briefly restrain Ubum, Hans knew it was only temporary. So he suggested that they split up and run. He wanted to attract Ubum to himself, allowing Samuel to escape. Samuel didn't hesitate and agreed. He agreed, which seemed like a good choice for now. However, the development of things is always unexpected. Just after running a few steps, Hans felt something was wrong. Why is there no movement behind him? He turned around to look. Surprisingly, Ubum had given up on his side. It turned to relentlessly pursue Samuel instead. How is this possible? Already fired 4 shots at Ubum. It is still chasing after Samuel. How deep is the deep sea? The abandoned textile factory. There are many buildings. Samuel dared not slow down his pace in order to escape. Hans didn't pay attention for a moment. Lost sight of Samuel. But right now, there is no time to worry about Samuel. The kidnapped children are the top priority. Hans squatted down. He twisted the switch on his mechanical leg. One by one, shiny little balls rolled down. The balls quickly unfolded into toy soldiers. Under Hans' command, they marched in perfect formation towards the interior of the abandoned textile factory to join the battle. The special police have already surrounded the textile factory. The tin-foil soldier marched forward in a neat stride, attracting all eyes. Just then, 2 grenades were thrown out from inside the textile factory. Everyone was shocked and scared. They quickly retreated, including the occultists, who had come to help. They could only stay away from this physical attack. A fierce explosion swept through the entire scene. If you hesitate for a moment, you will regret it immediately. Special police and occultists. Even though they dodged in time, the distance was too close. They were still affected. At the same time, the thick fog inside the textile factory grew thicker. The special police had to be extra vigilant. With a sudden gunshot, the cultists inside the textile factory launched the attack. One special police officer was shot in the head directly. Then, the crazed cultists emerged with billowing smoke, their monstrous features becoming more pronounced. They were completely insane. Compared to the unrestrained cultists, the special police officers were constrained. They had to assist in evacuating the occultist and avoid harming the children inside. The cultists, armed with weapons of unknown origin, relentlessly unleashed intense firepower at the special police forces. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the tin-foil soldiers, leveraging their small size advantage, quietly infiltrated the textile factory. By the time the cultists noticed something was amiss, the child who was locked in the cage as a sacrifice has been rescued by the tin-foil soldier. The leader of the Ubium cult has gone mad. Without these sacrifices, they will not receive the favor of the Mother Goddess. But the ritual has been disrupted. The connection between the cult and the evil god Ubium has been severed. They can no longer draw power from Ubium. Ubium is still relentlessly pursuing Samuel over here. This human who can see it must be consumed. Fortunately, Hans arrived just in time. He didn't hesitate and shot Ubium without mercy. The shot, however, missed unexpectedly, causing Hans to understand immediately that the children had already been rescued. Ubium lost her anchor and sank into the deep sea, hence becoming invisible. However, Samuel did not stop. He kept running desperately because he could still see Ubium, even though the painted skin brought immense mental burden to him. If he stopped, he would die. Hans's shock at this point was beyond words. Samuel, a novice in the field of mystery, found himself in waters deeper than he had imagined. The scene shifts back to the textile factory. The cult members have run out of ammunition. The SWAT team maintains their formation and starts to counterattack methodically. They still wanted to resist, but without ammunition and Ubium's power, they were just ordinary people without any strength to fight back. To make matters worse, internal members have defected. A believer suddenly made a move against another member of the cult with no warning. Others questioned one after another. "Dorothy, what are you doing?" The cult members thought she was just frightened. They wanted her to leave the cult. They also comforted her. "Don't worry. The Mother Goddess will bless you." Dorothy turned around and slapped him. Her real name is Dorothy. It's just an alias. She pretended to be a believer in order to gather information. The godson couldn't believe it. She actually dared to hit herself. He was about to shoot her. Dory reacted swiftly, snatching the gun away. She fired a shot next to the god's head. It scared her into immobility. Then he pointed the gun at her. "If you don't want to die, tell me where Pioneer Church and Tiny Man are." God made her realize. "You are a heretic who has infiltrated. You don't even think about probing Pioneer's news. Dory is ruthless and doesn't talk much. A pistol butt smashed on her face. Be honest and speak quickly. The sarin gas case in the LY City subway 20 years ago. Did you guys do it? The Prophet's 7 apertures are bleeding, but still not loosening the tongue. Instead, he raves, saying, "You know nothing. The Pioneer is liberating humanity. It will bring evolution to humanity." Dory really had no intention. She listened to her preaching in the church, held a gun to her, and then asked her who Tiny Man is. Is he the leader of the Pioneer Church? Who knows, at this moment, the Prophet suddenly burst out laughing. The revolution of the Pioneers is about to begin. The next moment, a puddle of blood splattered onto Dory's face. It turns out her head had cracked open directly. A monster that looked like a distorted baby flew out from within. Dory was a little uncertain. Is this the legendary Tiny Man? The monster didn't make any movements. It just burst into flames when it flew out. By the way, Tiny Man lingers in your shadow forever. Then Dory looked at it with incredulity. She turned into ashes. Dory looked at the body on the ground. Inevitably, regret filled her heart. The clue she had finally found was once again lost. But she had not intended to give up. She actually planned to take the body with her. Other believers found that the messenger of the gods had been killed. Their faith began to collapse, and they scattered and fled. Samuel continued to flee frantically, running for a long time. The side effects of using sacred artifacts left him physically and mentally exhausted. However, as he ran, he unexpectedly found himself in a dead end. The deep-sea demon, Ubium, was already close at hand. Samuel had no way to escape. In this situation, he was ready to take a gamble. After all, it was a fight to the death anyway. Ubium certainly did not hold back. She opened her blood-filled mouth toward Samuel. Samuel closed his eyes and began to wildly wave the sacred artifacts, the holy sword of physics, in his hand. At this moment, a voice came through the intercom, announcing that the Ubium cult had been completely eradicated. Samuel opened his eyes to find that Ubium had disappeared without a trace. His attacks had all landed on empty air. Samuel breathed a sigh of relief and muttered to himself, "That was close. I almost died for real." On the way back, an accidental brush of the shoulder made Samuel decide to follow this elegant and heroic woman. Because she was dragging a large suitcase, and there was a strange bloody smell. Samuel faintly felt that there seemed to be something related to the mystery studies in that box. She came from the direction of the abandoned textile factory where there was previously fighting. This is very wrong. So Samuel quietly kept a certain distance and followed her from behind. The woman walked ahead, completely unaware. Just then, there was a voice coming from Samuel's walkie-talkie. A believer is on the run, not wearing church clothes, carrying a huge suitcase. Samuel is completely certain. The woman he has been tracking is indeed the believer who is on the run. Just one phone call, and the special police will come to make the arrest. However, Samuel has no intention of doing so. The mysterious aura emanating from the woman's suitcase is just too intriguing for him. It wasn't until the cell phone rang that Samuel realized he seemed to have forgotten to contact Hans. After quickly checking in with Hans, Samuel suddenly had an idea. He saw a mysterious woman enter the restroom, so he followed her to the restroom door. Consuming his own blood, he used the sacred artifact flame kindling on the door handle to transmit the road map and checkpoint location set by the special police. He immediately turned around and left to avoid running into her. The mysterious woman is none other than Dory, who spent a full hour with a body in the bathroom. She wanted to bring the body back as soon as possible. The longer the time since death, the less useful information she could dig up. But now the SWAT team is all outside. She is carrying such a conspicuous suitcase. The chance of escaping is very slim. In the end, she couldn't bear to part with this suitcase. This is the closest she has been to Pioneer Church. As she was about to push the door open, when she touched the door handle, Samuel's flame kindling has been activated. The road map and checkpoint positions set by the special police are directly presented in Dory's mind. At the same time, the location of the shrine arranged by Samuel is also revealed. Dory looked unbelievably at everything before her. Is this a revelation from the divine? Is there really a God helping me? The current situation no longer allows her not to believe. Embracing a nothing to lose mentality, Dory found an escape route through a divine revelation. She didn't expect to really escape alive. Later, she arrived at the forensic laboratory. She removed all her disguises. She was prepared to conduct what she called a corpse conversation with the body in front of her. In her memory, the divine inspiration also told her to go to a place, which was where Samuel's shrine was located. However, she was eager to find out the news about Pioneer Church. She planned to go again tomorrow. Unexpectedly, even though it was so late, there were still students around. When she opened the door, she almost ran into Dory's actions. Luckily, Dory reacted quickly. In the blink of an eye, she covered the body on the operating table with a white cloth and then sent her own students away. Information about Dory. She is actually a forensic medicine instructor at the medical school of Ly City University. When she was young, her parents died in the sarin gas attack on the Ly City subway. It was a terrorist attack by a cult. She accidentally learned that behind the cult was a religious organization called the Pioneers, and there is a key figure named Tiny Man. She has been tracing the clues all along. She recently learned that the Ubum cult is connected to it. She managed to infiltrate the Ubum cult by all means. During her time in the cult, she encountered too many supernatural powers that do not belong in this world. Dory was not too surprised by the supernatural phenomena within the cult and the mutations of the followers, because she could occasionally see strange things when she was a child. She referred to her ability as corpse talk. It means, as the name implies, the ability to converse with deceased corpses. This time, she is preparing to use this ability on the dead Ubum cult shrine maiden. She spoke to the corpse. "I have prepared coffee. I want to talk to you." The corpse slowly sat up and unexpectedly said, "I don't like coffee." However, Dory ignored her and continued speaking. "You have no choice. Tell me everything you know about the Pioneer Church and Tiny Man." Dory interrogated the corpse. Samuel had returned home and was lying in bed thinking after taking a shower. Will Dory really follow his own instructions to go to the shrine? The previous users of the shrine were all small animals. I wonder how it will be different facing a person this time. And then he thought about the process of facing the demon Ubum. After thinking for a while, he fell asleep. In his dream, Samuel once again visited his deep sea. He found that there were more anchor lines added, with one being thick and bright. It should be from the white mouse that held the ceremony. Last time, Samuel's deep-sea depth was 5,400 meters. It steadily descends 200 meters every day. As long as he increases the speed of acquiring anchor lines, he should not get lost in the deep sea. But when Samuel looked at the scale, what? 10,000 meters. Samuel's depth in the deep sea plummeted dramatically, directly to 10,000 meters. Other mystics will even stop sinking at a certain depth. There's no way to go deeper. But on Samuel's side, it doesn't apply at all. You should know that Alice is a legal lowly over 200 years old. Her deep-sea depth only reaches the abyssal layer. And Samuel arrived at the abyssal layer in less than a month. Sink any further, and he might end up accompanying demons every day. The key is that Samuel is a beginner in the field of mystery studies, without any means to deal with it. Upon careful consideration, Samuel found that every time he faced a demon, his own deep-sea depths would suddenly plummet, just like when he encountered Miss Mary before. The only time when Samuel didn't abruptly sink into deep-sea depths upon encountering a demon was when he met the telephone booth demon. What set this apart from the other encounters was that the telephone booth demon was already dead. Samuel had never read about such a situation in the book. The world of mystery has too many unspeakable things. It seems he could only rely on his own speculations. Samuel lowered his head to look at the endless deep sea. Suddenly, he felt something was not quite right. Another dizzy spell. The scene shifts to the campus. A familiar voice wakes Samuel up. Samuel realizes he has returned to his high school from his previous life. His classmates are looking at the platform, listening to the teacher giving a lecture. The familiar voice comes again. Samuel turns his head to look. A classmate with twin ponytails says to Samuel, "The teacher is calling you. Didn't you hear it?" Samuel looked at the familiar face in front of him and was stunned. He wanted to call out her name, but he couldn't utter a word when it came to his lips. It's not that Samuel didn't want to speak. It was a suffocating feeling that prevented him from speaking. The next moment, Samuel sat up abruptly from the bed. He shouted, "Vivian, it was just a dream." Samuel believed that he wouldn't dream without reason, although he didn't know what the dream meant. But from today on, he would face the world of the deep sea reaching 10,000 meters. Sean looked at Samuel's back and glanced at the distant blue sky. He complained to Sharon, "What is that guy doing? He's been standing there for 5 minutes." Sharon retorted, "They do not know." Samuel is not pretending to be profound. Instead, he is immersed in fear. Since his inspiration, after arriving at a depth of 10,000 meters in the deep sea, this world presented more mysteries to him. The azure sky that appears ordinary to most people. In his eyes, it is a life-forbidden zone where demons roam. If they could affect the real world, destroying a whole city would be a piece of cake. Sean and others were bored and started playing with their phones. Just then a news alert popped up. The police department has cracked the largest child trafficking case in recent years. Upon hearing the news, Sharon remained expressionless. It seems like she was not involved in the operation to encircle. Samuel also participated in this operation, but he was remotely restraining Ubium. Sharon did not see him. Remembering the demon Ubium that surfaced from the sea with mass panic as the anchoring point, Samuel shuddered. If not for timely disrupting the demon ritual and calming the citizens' fears, he might have lost his life on the spot. Samuel was deep in thought. A soda can flew towards him. It turns out that Sean felt that Samuel was not right. He looked like he was seriously ill, and his body was overdrawn. He wanted Samuel to cheer up, but Samuel was suffering in silence. Sean is just an ordinary person. Even if he is not ordinary, he can't involve him. Fortunately, they are there. They make Samuel, this outsider, and ordinary people not appear so distant. In the evening, Samuel arrived at the antique shop. This is where the Black Door receives rewards. It's the place to exchange sacred artifacts, which are demon relics. The last Ubium cult incident. It has been listed in the records of the Abyssal Layer. Hans directly gave half to Samuel. A total of 500,000 coins and 2 lightless layer vouchers. Samuel was momentarily stunned. He didn't expect to receive so much just by focusing on fleeing. Hans explained to him, "You held back Ubium. You are the hero. Moreover, from beginning to end, you are the most dangerous one." Upon hearing this, Samuel did not refuse any more. He accepted his well-deserved reward. The lightless layer voucher in hand. Samuel qualifies for redeeming sacred artifacts again. He was immediately drawn to a sacred artifact called the Republic. This was very helpful for him to build his own anchoring system. Hans didn't expect that. Samuel, this guy, chose the direction of sacred artifacts. It's totally leaning towards idealism. Just as Samuel was about to explain, he was interrupted by Hans. "Do you still remember what I taught you at the beginning? In the world of mystery studies, don't explain explicitly. Samuel followed, and then said the next sentence together with Hans. Without probing further, the two exchanged smiles. In just a few days, they had established a profound friendship. Later, Hans stored all his vouchers, preparing to keep them for exchanging abyssal layer vouchers. This way, he could exchange for even more advanced sacred artifacts. Then he turned around and left. On Samuel's side, however, he was stopped by the antique shop attendant Janice. Newcomer, mystics willing to be your teacher are very rare. Because teaching mysteries can influence one's own mysteries, and even risk losing control. So every diligent inheritor is a sage with excellent qualities. You have a good teacher. Cherish them.